Quantum leaders, the pragmatist. Consciousness as architect, not bystander. The pragmatist's natural style, measured, deliberate, results-oriented, finds deeper resonance under the principle that consciousness is not a passive observer of systems, but their very architect. The pragmatists may see themselves as a facilitator or executor of a larger plan, but quantum leadership reveals something subtler. Every checklist they design, every system they maintain, and every task they complete is a reflection of their internal mental architecture. The structure they follow is also the structure they're constantly building through thought, presence, and repeated intent. With a motivation direction of away from, the pragmatist seeks to prevent breakdowns and minimize inefficiency. But their prevention mindset isn't just reactive, it's formative. By constantly anticipating what could go wrong, they unintentionally embed their caution into the architecture of the system. This principle reminds them that reforming reality doesn't begin with task, it begins with tone. If their consciousness is defensive, their systems become rigid. But if their consciousness evolves into calm precision, the system becomes quietly resilient. Their attention focus on self means they use their own standards to drive action. This internal alignment gives them personal discipline, but also makes their inner architecture the blueprint others will unconsciously follow. If the pragmatist moves with steadiness, others calibrate to that tempo. If they work with subtle urgency or strain, that imprint radiates. They are constantly setting the tempo, tone, and frame, regardless of title or visibility. With an internal frame of reference, they rely on their sense of what's effective and logical. The risk here is mistaking inherited habits for objective truths. This principle invites the pragmatist to examine the internal assumptions driving their systems. Are their protocols built on outdated beliefs about control, speed, or scarcity? Or are they born of present-moment wisdom and clarity? Their consciousness must be updated regularly, just like the systems they maintain. Their procedural operational style shows up as rules, flowcharts, routines. These are not neutral. They are encoded choices, anchored in perception. If the pragmatist constructs systems that are overly rigid, they often reflect a desire to eliminate uncertainty. But the conscious architect designs not to avoid uncertainty, but to hold it, gently and intelligently. The difference lies in how they see the unknown, threat or design space. The specific viewpoint of the pragmatist means they focus on detail. But detail, when driven by conscious design, becomes sacred infrastructure. Every form they build, every protocol they define, every instruction they deliver is an act of shaping reality. When they bring intention to detail, not just accuracy but purpose, the system becomes elegant, not just efficient. Their solo work preference allows them to work uninterrupted. But in this principle, solitude is reframed as a powerful space of authorship. In their quiet execution, they are not just doing, they are writing code into the system. Their workspace becomes a design chamber. What they believe while they're building, the system begins to reflect. Clarity of thought becomes functional integrity. Focused energy becomes structural coherence. With dissociated emotional engagement, the pragmatist operates with clarity and objectivity. Yet consciousness as architect requires some emotional attunement. If the system feels cold or disconnected, the team's performance and morale may falter. Pragmatists don't need to be emotional. They need to be aware that their systems feel a certain way. Tone, timing, pressure, and interface all carry emotional architecture. When built with sensitivity, these elements create environments that are not only productive, but humane. As a matcher, they favor what works, and they often replicate it without hesitation. But now, replication becomes authorship. Every method they reuse is not just a choice, it's a declaration. This is how we do things. If they don't consciously evolve their templates, they unintentionally reinforce old consciousness. The pragmatic architect upgrades systems not just by adding efficiency, but by designing from new insight. Their through-time orientation allows them to plan, forecast, and phase. But now they see that the flow of time is a structure too. Their timelines become scaffolding for others. If they compress too tightly, people burn out. If they leave too much space, clarity dissipates. As an architect of time, the pragmatist begins shaping temporal flow as a functional container, allowing enough stretch to absorb the unexpected while still holding strategic tension. And their primary drive, things, gives them mastery of material execution. But under this principle, things are no longer just outputs. They are forms of consciousness made visible. Every finished product, every resolved task, every structured workflow reflects how the pragmatist was thinking and feeling while it was built. Their systems become living reflections of their mental order. And when they design consciously, when they bring intention, rhythm, and presence to their work, they don't just execute change, they build it in. They stop merely completing tasks and start encoding intelligence into form. That's when the pragmatist becomes not just the finisher, but the one who shapes reality, quietly, precisely, and powerfully. Quantum leaders, the pragmatist. Polarity creates the blueprint of experience. The pragmatist's natural style, logical, competent, and grounded in execution, is often viewed as steady and neutral. Yet beneath that surface lies constant polarity. Precision versus adaptability, speed versus quality, control versus trust. This quantum principle teaches that polarity is not something to avoid. It's the source of all system dynamics. For the pragmatist, success comes not from eliminating these tensions, but by learning to hold and design through them. Every decision they make lives within an axis of opposites. Their task is to engineer stability by integrating both ends of the spectrum. With a motivation direction of away from, the pragmatist is tuned to avoid error. The polarity here is caution versus momentum. If they lean too far into risk aversion, progress slows. Too far into action, mistakes increase. Their power lies in harmonizing the two, building systems that prevent error while still allowing forward motion. When they acknowledge fear as one pole and trust as the other, they stop fighting the tension and start designing with it. Their attention focus on self creates autonomy and internal consistency. But polarity appears between independence and interdependence. The pragmatist functions best when they oscillate between doing things alone and engaging in well-timed collaboration. Holding this polarity makes their contribution precise and context-aware. They are strongest when they work solo, not in isolation but in alignment with the broader flow. With an internal frame of reference, they trust their own standards. The polarity here lies between certainty and curiosity. Too much certainty creates inflexibility. Too much openness dilutes decisiveness. Pragmatists who hold both, confidence in their method and curiosity about new possibilities, build processes that are not only solid but evolutionary. Their procedural operational style reveals one of their most fundamental polarities: system versus spontaneity. A perfectly repeatable process offers control, but if it becomes overly rigid, it blocks response to live conditions. The pragmatist matures when they allow for structured improvisation, procedures that flex slightly without losing integrity. In this design polarity, the system becomes a responsive skeleton, not a cage. Their specific viewpoint provides detail mastery, but polarity shows up as detail versus direction. The pragmatist may be tempted to fixate on accuracy, but too much attention to parts can obscure the whole. When they hold both poles, executing fine details with an understanding of the larger aim, they build systems that are both flawless and functional within broader frameworks. A solo work preference supports deep focus. Yet here, the polarity of solitude versus synergy must be balanced. The pragmatist often assumes others will slow them down, but collaboration can also reveal blind spots or improve flow. They evolve when they learn to move from productive isolation into selective collaboration and back again. This rhythm protects their efficiency while enhancing their intelligence. With dissociated emotional engagement, the pragmatist excels in emotionally intense environments without being overwhelmed. Polarity appears here as objectivity versus connection. Too much detachment reduces warmth and trust. Too much emotional merging risks distraction. Pragmatists who remain grounded while allowing subtle emotional data to inform their timing, tone, and communication create systems that feel human and function with excellence. As a matcher, they lean into precedent. The polarity here is tradition versus transformation. The pragmatist excels when they treat what worked before as scaffolding, not ceiling. They honor the past without becoming bound by it. This polarity allows them to create systems that are stable enough to be trusted and alive enough to adapt. Their through-time orientation gives them control over pacing. But time itself carries polarity, urgency versus sustainability. Some tasks require fast turnaround, others require deliberate pacing. The pragmatist begins to design timelines with this polarity in mind, building in surge and rest, deadlines and buffers. They stop being ruled by time and start shaping it into cycles that sustain output and clarity. And with a primary drive of things, the pragmatist builds tangible results. But polarity reminds them, things are endpoints, but they emerge from process. The thing only reflects quality if the process that led to it was balanced. When they honor the polarity between speed and thoroughness, discipline and iteration, precision and flow, their work transcends productivity. It becomes embodiment. In this space, the pragmatist ceases to be a passive executor of tasks. They become a master of polarity, holding opposites long enough to create systems that don't just work, but endure. Quantum leaders, the pragmatist. Quantum entanglement, the thread between all things. The pragmatist's natural style, grounded, task-oriented, and outcome-focused, thrives in environments of clarity and structure. Yet within the quantum frame of entanglement, they are invited to recognize that every task they complete is not isolated. Each action is connected, energetically and structurally, to a web of consequences, people, emotional tones, and systemic outcomes. The thing they build, fix, or implement is entangled with who it's for, how it's used, and the unconscious patterns behind it. Whether or not they seek complexity, the pragmatist is always working within a field. With a motivation direction of away from, the pragmatist seeks to eliminate inefficiency and prevent errors. Yet entanglement teaches that even error prevention sends subtle ripples. A control they install to reduce risk may unintentionally send signals of mistrust. A safeguard in one area may constrict creativity in another. The pragmatist's leadership grows when they pause to ask, what unseen relationships is this decision touching? They move from local optimization to field-aware design. Their attention focus on self makes them self-reliant and consistent, but entanglement reveals that no action is truly contained. A decision they make in isolation still affects the team's rhythm. Their energy while executing a task becomes embedded in the outcome. Others will unconsciously attune to the vibration with which the pragmatist works. If they move with quiet resentment, urgency, or fatigue, that frequency may echo in the system long after the task is complete. Their influence is quiet, but continuous. With an internal frame of reference, they trust their own logic. But logic does not make them separate. Their beliefs shape how they interact with tools, systems, and people, and thus what they build. A task completed with internal calm leaves a different energetic residue than one completed from mental strain. Entanglement reframes self-trust as systemic responsibility. The clearer and cleaner their internal state, the more harmonious the structures they create. Their procedural operational style emphasizes clear steps. But each procedure they follow or build becomes a script others internalize. A sequence isn't just efficient, it teaches behavior. It tells users how much freedom they have. It encodes values like speed, thoroughness, hierarchy, or trust. The pragmatist matures when they see procedures not only as paths to outcomes, but as carriers of systemic tone. Through their specific viewpoint, they focus on the granular. But entanglement reveals that small details often affect larger relationships. A minor wording in an email can shift someone's emotional state. A tiny misalignment in a workflow might erode long-term motivation. The pragmatist's eye for detail becomes an asset when paired with sensitivity to impact. How will this affect how people feel, act, or relate over time? With a solo work preference, they often work behind the scenes, but quantum entanglement reminds them that their energy is never hidden. Even if they don't interact with the team constantly, their presence or absence is felt. Their quality of execution shapes others' ability to relax, create, or move forward. When they recognize their systemic influence, their quiet work becomes an invisible stabilizer for the entire team field. Their dissociated emotional engagement keeps them focused and unbiased. Yet, entanglement means emotional neutrality isn't invisibility. Their lack of overt emotion still communicates something. Teams may interpret it as calm strength or as detachment. The pragmatist grows by becoming more intentional with tone, posture, and brief gestures of presence. In a quantum field, even subtle cues transmit meaning across the network. As a matcher, they depend on what's worked before. But entanglement challenges repetition. What worked then may no longer be resonant now. A tool that created efficiency in one context may suppress agility in another. The pragmatist who senses the evolving energy of the system, what it wants, what it's resisting, can subtly evolve legacy systems without needing dramatic change. This is quiet innovation through resonance. Their through-time orientation makes them a natural sequencer and long-term executor. Entanglement introduces a new layer. Timelines are not just linear, they're shared. Their pace affects others' bandwidth. A delayed task may stress downstream roles. A well-timed completion can unlock flow across departments. The pragmatist becomes not just a planner, but a synchronizer, feeling into what the collective system needs now, even as they hold the schedule. And their primary drive, things, anchors them in tangible creation. But quantum entanglement turns everything into a carrier of connection. A workflow isn't just a task map. It's a signal of what kind of system this is. A tool isn't just for output, it communicates values. The pragmatist who builds with awareness of who the thing is for, how it will feel, and what it invites into the culture becomes more than a taskmaster. They become a weaver, designing physical function that enhances emotional, relational, and systemic flow. In this space, their grounded intelligence becomes sacred infrastructure for coherence itself.